Hello everyone, hope you are fine. Today we have made some series of lectures to discuss with you the multiple choice questions that you encounter in different international exams or even the exams that occur in your own country. Basically, to make the concepts crystal clear, we will discuss topic wise MCQs and the sum of overview of the mechanisms and how the MCQs appear for different topics so that you can have idea about how the MCQs come in different exams. So today our topic is about the renal diseases, and in the renal diseases we will discuss IgA nephropathy, diabetic nephropathy and proteinuria. So let's see. First of all, we will discuss the structure of glomerulus. The structural and functional unit of nephron of kidney is a nephron. That nephron is composed of renal corpuscle and the renal tubule. And the renal corpuscle is made up of the glomerulus, and this glomerulus is actually the tuft of capillaries and the Bowman space. And when we see here, there is some arterioles. One is afferent, other is efferent, and the afferent arteriole is the one that supplies blood to the glomerulus, and the efferent arteriole is one that takes the blood away from the glomerulus. There are some cells here that are called the mesangial cells, and this one is the glomerular capillaries that are lined by endothelial cells. This one, and these cells that have some finger-like projections, these are the podocytes, and between these endothelial cells of the glomerular capillaries and these podocytes there is a membrane which is called as the basement membrane, that is the glomerular basement membrane. And these are the proximal tubular cells, and this space is the Bowman space. So we see what happens in the IgA nephropathy. Actually, IgA is the immunoglobulin that is naturally in the human body, but sometimes what happens is patients with IgA nephropathy often have a genetically determined increase in circulating levels of IgA, and this IgA accumulates in the glomerular mesangium. This mesangial cells and its mesangial matrix composes the mesangium, and these antibodies deposit in the mesangium, and these antibodies causes some inflammatory reaction which invites some cytokines and chemokines to come over here and starts the inflammatory process which destroys the glomerulus and takes its ability to filter the blood to form the urine. And we normally do not allow this glomerular structure do not allow to filter WBCs, RBCs, proteins or various substances that cannot pass through these filtration membranes. So when these structure is damaged, so the cells that were normally not allowed to pass, they will pass through the structure and will appear in the urine. So what happens here when there is inflammatory reaction? It causes also mesangial cell proliferation, and cytokines are there and they causes renal injury. So we see here when we see the multiple choice question, there is a 34-year-old man is seen for hematuria. It states it had it on 2 previous occasions, both in relation to an upper respiratory tract infection. On both previous occasions, the urine cleared spontaneously over a period of 5 to 7 days. Now he is feeling lethargic with a sore throat for the past 5 days. Blood pressure is 170/95 in both arms, sitting and supine on repeat testing. Okay, we see here the classical signs. What happens in IgA nephropathy is there are the presence of dysmorphic RBCs in the urine that suggest the glomerular hematuria. And the two common presentations of the patients with IgA nephropathy are episodic gross hematuria and the persistent microscopic hematuria. And what happens is the patient will complain of the upper respiratory tract infection, and following the upper respiratory tract infection or during the infection there will be hematuria, and here the person is complaining over a period of 5 to 7 days. So it is the most common cause of glomerulonephritis in the world, and the most important thing is the age. Patient will come in the second and third decade of life. So the patient here is 34 years of age. So we see urine analysis gives specific gravity of 1020. Nitrates are negative, but blood is positive and protein is positive, means there is glomerular injury. With urine microscopy, oxalate crystals, dysmorphic RBCs and red cell casts. So what is this? So we have discussed that this is the classical case of the IgA nephropathy, because approximately 40 to 50% patients present with one or recurrent episodes of visible hematuria, usually following an upper respiratory tract infection. And this has sometimes been called as synphrengenic hematuria. And some patients, there is association with cirrhosis, HIV infection and celiac diseases. And what will be the diagnosis? In the diagnosis is confirmed by the kidney biopsy and with immunofluorescence or immunoperoxidase studies for the IgA deposits, and the C3 levels will be normal. So if we see another case, so 25-year-old man presented with urine. He denied any other urinary symptoms but admitted having sore throat and the low-grade fever over the last 2 days. And one thing is there, that sore throat and the post sore throat or post-streptococcal infection to the kidneys, that is called as post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis, when we have to distinguish between the two. So we see he admitted to red urine at least 3 times before, but it used to clear up in 2 to 3 days. Apart from 15 red cells per high power, urine analysis was otherwise normal. Plain abdominal X-ray was normal. Which of the following investigation would likely establish the cause of hematuria in this patient? Measurement of serum anti-streptococcal, anti-streptolysine ASO titers, throat swab culture, CT scan of the abdomen, renal biopsy, or measurement of the blood urea and serum creatinine. So if we differentiate between post-streptococcal, we see the symptoms after sore throat. We will have after 1 to 2 weeks the glomerular symptoms will appear, but here the symptoms are just over the sore throat and low-grade fever over the last 2 days, and he presented the blood in the urine. So there is very short history of the sore throat and the blood in the urine. So it will be IgA nephropathy, and the diagnosis will be by renal biopsy. And if we uh, discuss the treatment, so this will be by RAS blockers, renin angiotensin aldosterone blockers, and steroids and steroid sparing agents like azathioprine, cyclophosphamide, and the biological agents like rituximab may help. Now, if we see the glomerular structure, again we see if for diabetic glomerulopathy, we see that again there are mesangial cells over here and the mesangial matrix. So what happens in the diabetes? In diabetes, we know normally the amount of glucose that is filtered, whatever the glucose is filtered through this structure, all of it is reabsorbed back to the blood through the proximal convoluted tubular cells, because there are receptors for the sodium glucose and they co-transport and they reabsorb the sodium and glucose back. But when in long standing and poorly controlled blood glucose level, multiple changes in the filtration units of the kidneys occur, and what happens that the transporters get saturated, and when they get saturated after a threshold amount, the nephrons start to leak the glucose into the urine. So what happens when the glucose levels are high and when the threshold has crossed and the glucose starts to appear in urine, and the multiple changes that occur in the glomerular itself, there will be the thickening of this basement membrane, that is between these endothelial cells and these podocytes. This will be thickened, and again there will be increase in these mesangial cells, and the increase in the matrix, this mesangial matrix, it will invade all the glomerular capillaries and they produce deposits. When these cells invade these glomerular capillaries, they will produce some deposits known as Kimmel-Steele-Wilson nodules. These deposits will be Kimmel-Steele-Wilson nodules. So now this matrix and cells will proliferate and shutting the glomerular filtration, and when this will shut off, there will be again leaking of the proteinaceous substances in the urine, and when albumin, globulin and different proteins will appear in the urine, so there will be less osmotic pressure that will keep the fluid into the blood vessels. So due to increase in hydrostatic pressure, there will be edema, generalized edema. So when the protein will leak and this diabetic nephropathy, it is especially characterized by persistent albuminuria, which will be greater than 300 mg per day, and it will be confirmed on at least 2 different occasions taken 3 to 6 months apart, and there will be progressive decline in GFR and elevated blood pressure, and the therapeutic goals for the blood pressure will be less than 130 by 80 mmHg, and HbA1c will be less than 7% in the therapeutic goals. So now we discuss what will happen in the diabetic glomerulopathy. So which one of the following is the most common secondary cause of nephrotic syndromes in the adults? So we see that what is nephrotic syndrome? It is the greater than 3.5 gram per day of the albumin into the urine, and there will be generalized edema as there will be loss of proteins in the urine and increase in the osmotic pressure. Less decrease in the osmotic pressure and increase in the hydrostatic pressure will cause the fluid to remain outside and cause edema, and there will be loss of proteins in the urine and less protein in the blood, so it will be hypoproteinemia. So what causes most commonly this condition? Diabetes, SLE, Hep C, NSAIDs, multiple myeloma. So it is diabetes mellitus, the most common cause of the nephrotic syndrome. Then on an annual screen, a patient with type 2 diabetes mellitus is found to have microalbuminuria. Which of the following therapies should be initiated? A diuretic, an alpha blocker, a beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, and ACE inhibitor. When the patient loses much protein in the urine, as we know, the patient will loses all type of protein, and in compensation the liver will make new proteins, and in that unfortunately liver will make lipoproteins also, and the patient will be at the risk of developing hyperlipidemia and the risk of developing for the coronary artery disease, because there will be increased LDL, increased VLDL, and increased tags and IDLs. So due to this there will be excessive lipid urea also. So and fat lobules will come in the urine, and there will be loss of other proteins like transferrin is also lost. So there will be iron deficiency anemia. Antithrombin 3 is lost. There will be the risk of DVT, loss of complement, so there will be risk of infection, and when there will be more damage, then hematuria will also be there. But if we want to stop the disease progression, we need a medication that will stops or slow down the proteinuria. So we know on the efferent arterioles, there are the receptors for ACE2, ACE receptor, angiotensin converting enzyme receptors. So when it acts on angiotensin acts on its receptor, it causes the efferent arterioles to be constricted, and there will be more pressure in the glomerular capillaries, and there will be more proteinaceous substances leaking into the mesangium, and then the mesangium also grows pathologically and the glomerular apparatus damages. Because already proteinaceous substances accumulates, so there will be stiffening of the blood vessels in the glomerulus and causes arteriolosclerosis, and the overall combined effect due to ACE2 receptors and the protein substances leaking, it will cause the increase in the pressure. So when we give ACE inhibitor to the patient, so the ACE, then there will be reduced systemic pressure, blood pressure, and the overall damage to the glomerular apparatus can be reduced because there will be less proteinaceous leak due to less pressure in the glomerular capillaries, and there will be less growth of the mesangial cells and less progression of the disease. So ACE inhibitor is the, or ARB blockers are the renoprotective agents in the diabetic glomerulonephritis. So 55-year-old male presents to a department for diabetes follow-up. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 10 years ago and has been managed with glyburide and metformin. At this visit 3 months ago, he was found to have albumin urea 350 mg per day and his blood pressure was 140 by 85 mmHg. His blood glucose at that time was 6.3 millimole per liter and HbA1c was 6.7%. Physical examination, the temperature is normal, blood pressure is 135 by 85 mmHg and the pulse 75 per minute and the respiration 15 per minute. Laboratory studies, BUN, blood urea nitrogen 7 millimole per liter, creatinine 90 micromole per liter and urinary albumin 355 milligram per day. So, what we will do? We will, as we know, in the diabetic nephropathy, we have already discussed that ACE inhibitor or ARB blockers are renoprotective, but using only the medication doesn't provides much benefit if we do it with restriction of the salt. So best option will be restrict salt and add losartan. Now, 60-year-old male who has a 5-year history of diabetes mellitus is found to have an elevated creatinine level that has increased from 133 to 166.8 micromole per liter over the past year. His current medication include lisinopril. Lisinopril is an ACE inhibitor to control the blood pressure and proteinuria. He was aware that tight control of his blood pressure will help prevent the progression of renal disease, but wants to know what else he can do to preserve the renal function. As we have already discussed that the therapeutic goal in diabetic nephropathy should be less than 130 by 80 mmHg. So, he is doing his tight control of his blood glucose and he wants to know what else he can do to preserve the renal function. So, he is already taking lisinopril. So, stop ACE inhibitor and add an ARB blocker. It doesn't sense anything. Follow a high protein, low fat diet. It doesn't help. Use erythropoietin therapy to keep hemoglobin level greater than 140 gram per liter. But here we don't need this because all the labs are okay and he just want to know what he can do to preserve the renal function. So erythropoietin therapy here has no to preserve the renal function because it is the function of the kidney and what we can do to preserve actually the renal thing so that it can do the activities of normal that the kidney was doing before. Add a calcium channel blocker. So the most thing is to tight blood pressure control, maintain BP 130 by 80 mmHg or less. So the best option is this. And in diabetic nephropathy, the BP control, glycemic control, lifestyle modification, lipid control is the main key, and we have to check serum creatinine and potassium levels within the first week of initiating the ACE inhibitors or ARB blockers and at the time of acute illness. Serum creatinine can safely be allowed to rise up when we take these medications, but there is a level that is up to 30% with the initiation of the ACE inhibitor and ARB blockers. And the things will be stabilized in 2 to 4 weeks. But if there is greater than 30% rise in serum creatinine, that's very important to know, greater than 30% rise or hyperkalemia, then we will have to discontinue medication and consider second line agents that will be non-dihydropyridine calcium channel blockers that are diltiazem or verapamil. And also consider holding ACE inhibitor, ARB blocker or diuretics with acute illness in women before becoming pregnant. And when we have, if somebody says that when we have to refer the patient to nephrologist, then we will say that if albumin creatinine ratio is greater than 60 milligram per dl or the kidney function, that is the glomerular filtration rate, is less than 30 ml per minute, then progressive kidney functions are just declining, and we are unable to achieve BP targets and unable to stay on the ACE inhibitor or ARB blockers, then we will refer to the nephrologist. Now 20-year-old man is referred for assessment of proteinuria found on an insurance examination. The history is unrevealing. Physical examination is normal. Urinalysis show 1 to 2 plus proteinuria by dipstick and is otherwise unremarkable. This is the patient with just proteinuria and other history is unrevealing. Physical examination is normal. So what is this? Urea nitrogen is normal. Serum creatinine is normal. What would be the correct management? What we will do? This is the question of the orthostatic proteinuria. In this, what we do is determine the 24-hour urine protein excretion fraction to supine and upright samples. We can have the clear concept in the next question. 25-year-old male who came to your office for a pre-employment physical examination is found to have 2 plus protein on a dipstick urine test. You repeat the examination 2 times within the next month and results are still positive. Results of a 24-hour urine collection show protein excretion less than 2 gram per day and normal creatinine clearance. As part of his further evaluation, you obtain split urine collections. Actually, in this, the split urine collection is the thing that is very important. So here are the protein excretion less than 2 gram per day is very important. Normal creatinine clearance, nothing is happening to the kidney. As part of his further, you obtain a split urine collections here within a 16-hour daytime, and what you see that in the daytime specimen there is increased concentration of the protein and an 8-hour overnight specimen is normal. So this thing brings our mind to a thing that is orthostatic or a situation that is benign. So what additional appropriate evaluation for this man's problem at this time would include? So what you will do? You will do nothing. So no specific additional testing, because this is actually the benign condition in persons younger than 30 years of age who excrete less than 2 gram per day protein per day and who have a normal creatinine clearance. With a normal creatinine clearance, should be tested for orthostatic proteinuria. This benign condition occurs in 3 to 5% of adolescents and young adults and characterized by protein excretion in the upright position but normal protein excretion when the patient is supine. And how it is diagnosed? Using the split urine collections when the person is awake and when persons at the night time, and in the night time there will be low protein. So since this is a benign condition with normal renal function, no further evaluation is necessary. So thank you for watching, and if you have any questions you can write in comments. Thank you.